go. It's 29 minutes before the hour of 8 o'clock. Make welcome to the Mark in the Morning show. One of the finest gentlemen I know in Bradley County and a true miracle of God in heaven. Oh, I'll let him tell that story in just a minute, but good morning to Cameron Touchstone. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine.
Great.
How old are you now?
19.
Seems like you're older than that, but I guess I'm wrong. You look older than that.
I've known Cameron since he was elementary school age, probably. So,
yeah, very young. Was that an old man's joke?
No.
Are you telling me that I'm old?
No, Jay and I are old. You're not old. Here's the thing. I'm trying to remember how many years ago it was when you first started coming in here. How old were you when you started riding bulls?
Let's see. 4. It's probably been 6 or 7 years ago.
Okay. Well, you'd come in and we'd play your bull riding music, and you'd talk about riding bulls. And, well, everybody was concerned, your parents mainly, that you were going to get hurt by riding a bull. And
I'm surprised I didn't.
To my knowledge, you never really did you?
Nope. Nothing major, at least. Yeah. Nothing like what's happened recently.
So here's what I want you to do. Well, first of all, thank you for coming in. And I said this earlier this morning, and I want to say it again. I give credit where credit's due, and I give you all the credit for the reason of this show this morning, because you're the one that contacted me. It's been a while back. Well, we saw each other at the bistro over here. And you asked me if you could come in one day. You'd love to come in, give your testimony, and share what God did for you. And I thought that was a great idea. And you reminded me here recently, and I thought, what a perfect Thanksgiving show leading into Thanksgiving holiday. So I want you to walk us through it and tell as much as you want to tell, whatever, and we'll record it, put it on YouTube so people can listen to it later. But anyhow, thank you for giving me this idea for this show, and thank you for being here this morning.
Well, thank you for letting me be here. I think I told you this at the bistro that day, but I sat there one night and I thought about it, and I said, okay, yes, God has done this in my life and brought me this far for sure, but it's because of everybody in town and out of town that have prayed and talked to God so much. He finally said, okay, well, maybe I need to do something about this. And so he did something about this for sure. And it's because of all of those people who have prayed and told him, hey, can you please help this guy out? It's because of all of those people why I walked in here today.
Amen. Good for you.
And so
tell us what happened, Cameron. Start from the beginning.
On March 3rd of this year, I went to work, and another company showed up, and he needed a tire aired up on a trailer, like a big truck tire. And for some reason, I was being Mr. Nice Guy, and I decided to air it up for him. And they hold 110 pounds of pressure.
That's a lot of pressure, by the way.
And
an average car, Dr. J, holds what?
30,
yeah.
Okay, so that gives you a comparison.
And it had 90 pounds in it. I just checked it, and I looked up at the guy and told him it had 90 pounds in it, more or less. And he said, yeah, about 10 more pounds. And before I even got the air hose on the tire, the sidewall of the tire did what's called the zipper effect and exploded. It blew up, and the pressure discharging from that tire broke the right side of my face, my right nasal cavity, my nose, and the bottom left part of my jaw, and also pushed one tooth up out here, back here, and then picked me up and threw me back into a metal table where I hit my head and got a brain injury and went to sleep for a little while.
Do you remember any of that?
Not a single minute.
Do you remember any of the accident?
That's one thing that I have to be thankful for, it, because going through the brain injury specialized hospital, and they also specialize in spinal cord injury. But going through that hospital, I met a handful of people that did remember their accidents of why they were there, and I couldn't imagine remembering what happened to me. I could not imagine.
Did the man next to you, who the truck owned it, did he get hurt?
Not one bit.
Okay.
Nobody else got hurt but you.
Just me.
So you remember the explosion?
No.
I don't
You don't
really
remember that either.
I don't really remember anything about this year before the accident.
Is that right?
That's correct.
Well, the Cubs didn't win the World Series. We'll start there.
Well, good thing.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: how long after the injury took place, you're in the hospital, and all before you actually
Started
Yeah.
becoming conscious.
yes?
I would have to say it was probably right around the middle of April, and that's when I started gaining memory and realizing what's going on and who's coming to see me and everything. It's actually funny. I used to work at Posey Gun and Pawn for a great family friend, Terry Posey, and he has a twin brother, identical twin brother, and he comes in. Used to, when I worked at Terry's gun store, the biggest pet peeve I had would be people coming in and they would start talking about how great of friends him and Terry were in high school, and they were best friends, and they did everything together. And then they would say, "Can I speak to Terry?" So we would go back there and get Terry, and he came back out, and he was instantly Tim, his twin brother.
Mm.
And that was the biggest pet peeve I had when I worked there. And so Tim, his brother, comes down to Atlanta to see me in the hospital, and he prayed with me and brought me t-shirts and all kinds of stuff. And what felt like was the very next day, honestly, it felt like the same day, but it was like a week later, Terry comes down to see me. And Terry walks in, and I said, "Hey, Tim, how's it going?" He was instantly, I don't know why, his wife was there, and I never once thought, why is his wife with Tim? But I called him Tim.
How many surgeries did you have?
I had the plate put in right here over my cheek, and then I had a jaw, 2 bars put in my bottom left part of my jaw right here. So just 2, but there was only 2 times maybe that I remember feeling pain while I was in the hospital, and that was this jaw surgery I had over here. I was screaming and crying so loud and so hard that finally that doctor came in there and wrote me a prescription, and I went to sleep again.
Mm.
And then the second part of pain that I do remember was I had my mouth wired shut, and when they unwired it, they offered me the numbing medicine, kind of like what they give you at the dentist, and I can't stand that stuff. So I just told them, nah, I'd man up and live through it. And they started jerking wires out and pulling those things off my teeth, and that was, it
Ouch.
was awful.
Bless your
It
heart,
was
man.
awful.
So you were about a month that you didn't know anything.
Nothing at all whatsoever. But I did learn that when my accident happened, the gentleman who owns the company was actually in Nashville at the time and was waiting to go in a meeting with the governor of the state of Tennessee about something to do with the roads. But he was waiting for the governor to show up for a meeting, and he's been waiting for so many minutes, and then he gets a phone call from his wife, who was actually at the office that day and knew what was going on and everything. And then she told him and stuff, and he finally just up and told the governor's secretary that he had to go. He had a lot of stuff going on, so he just up and left and came back to Bradley County.
Good for him.
Wow.
He's a great guy.
So you were at were you in Chattanooga at the hospital there when it happened, or did they take you to Atlanta?
When it happened, I got transported from where I work to Erlanger,
Yeah.
and then I was at Erlanger from March 3rd till March 13th,
Okay.
and then I was transported to Shepherd Center in Atlanta.
You didn't know anything about that. They take you by ambulance or helicopter? Or?
Yeah, by ambulance. And they were actually, the day of the accident, they were going to, Life Force?
Yes.
They were going to Life Force me to Erlanger, but weather wasn't clear enough to run Life Force. And so they send an ambulance, and then the ambulance loads me up and goes to pull out of the driveway at Wright Brothers, and the ambulance just quit. It was probably because it was one of those junky Fords. But,
That'll be fine. Good morning to all the Bradley County ambulance
Thank
personnel this morning that are.
well, they've got it fixed now, and I'm pretty sure, I want to say they got rid of that junky Ford.
What should they replace that junky Ford with, Cameron?
Probably a Chevrolet that runs.
Cameron Touchstone, our guest this morning. It's 19 minutes before the hour of 8 o'clock. He is a fine young man. He's 19 years old, and he was in a very, very traumatic accident where he worked. Are you back to work yet?
By the doctor say so, I can only work 3 days a week, 6 hours a day. But all I do is data entry on the computer. And I've been there here lately. I've been there a lot more than 3 days a week, 6 hours a day. I've been there as much as I wanted to be there.
Yeah.
So yeah, somewhat.
I saw, and I'm going to get to your parents here in a second and something about a mother's love. I saw where I think it was your mom posted the other day. Did you go and take your driver's
Driving
test?
evaluation.
Yeah, how'd that go?
And, it went well.
He didn't walk here this morning.
Did you drive here?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Maybe he did
But,
walk.
we both lived through the driving evaluation, and
We both. That would be your mom?
no,
Or the instructor.
she got to go out and drink coffee while I was having the test, but the instructor and I, yes, we both lived. Thankfully,
Oh, okay.
thankfully he had the controls over on his side too, the brake and the gas
Oh,
and
goodness.
the steering wheel too. So, which he never had to use any of it, thankfully, but if he needed to, it was there for him to use.
Can I ask you, and if you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to, what disabilities or temporary disabilities right now are you having to deal with? What's the hardest thing you're dealing with on a daily basis?
As far as stuff that affects my way of life throughout the day, I don't have anything really, really big, but for a little while, I was having to work on fine motor skills, and then there were many things that I would do to increase my memory, because I wouldn't have remembered coming to see you or Dr. J tomorrow if somebody asked me, but I've actually gotten down pat what I did yesterday.
Good for you.
Definitely. And now I'd say the biggest thing that I work on is probably temper tantrums. I'll go out and I don't know why, because when I look at the reason or think about the reason behind why I threw a temper fit behind whatever that was that I threw a temper fit about, it makes absolutely zero sense. But there's not one single picture hanging on the wall at our house anymore. I threw and got rid of all of those. All the beautiful pictures and picture frames that my mom
What are you
decorated
talking
the
about?
house
In
with.
a temper tantrum?
In a temper tantrum.
What is wrong with you?
I don't know what's wrong with
You're
me.
going to go from having a head injury to a butt injury when your dad gets through with you, whipping you.
You got that right.
Well, I guess some of this stuff. Let me tell you something. And I've said this before on the radio. When my mom passed away, I'll never, ever, ever forget a gentleman. He was a county commissioner at the time, which means nothing, but he's been a friend of mine for 25 years or so. Ed Elkins came through the line, and a lot of people came through that day, and you'd hear things like, she's in a better place, she's better off, those sort of things. But
Right.
Ed Elkins came through, and he looked at me, Cameron, and the only thing he said, and I'll never forget it, he said, nobody in this world will ever love you like your mom loved you. And I'm here to tell you, my friend, I'll tell you the same thing. Nobody will ever love you like your mom loved. Stood by your side, stayed down there with you. You know what all she did. I don't have to tell
Oh
you.
yeah. And when you can't walk yourself to the restroom, when you can't fix your own plate at home to eat off of, when you can't even cut your own steak at the bistro anymore, when you can't hold sweet tea up to your mouth, when you can't do all of that stuff, guess who's there?
Mom.
Your mom's gonna be there.
God bless her.
You got that right. Because, and I'm glad that you pulled that out and stated that, was that because throughout my accident and everything, there were two people that were there endlessly for me. And one of those people, I will not mention a name or anything. And then another one was my mother.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother is still there in every single aspect. She is there endlessly and shows her love for me endlessly. And then the other person was there very, very much, and I really, really appreciate everything that person did, because I think about this in two ways. I think about where I would be if that person wouldn't have been there, and then I think about that also, where would I be if that person wouldn't have been there in a bad way. I think about it in a good and a bad way, depending on how you look at it. I think about where I would be if that person wouldn't have been there, and then I think about also where would I be, how much further would I be in walking, whatever physical disabilities that I have left. I think about where would I be if that person wouldn't have been there in the the memory stuff that I've had to start gaining back. I think about all that stuff. And me saying that leads me to say that if you're going through a difficult time and have to go through some type of therapy, or you have to, maybe relax for a little while, take some days off or whatever you're going through, just stop and think about it, and do you really want to get through it or not, and get past it. And if there's anyone holding you back from getting past that, then you just need to turn and go a different route and look at things differently and go on through life. You can't just sit there and let them keep holding you back. You got to keep going.
Yeah.
Got to keep moving forward.
When you come to, what's the first thing you asked for to eat? Do you remember?
Actually, and I told my mom, I told her many, many times that when I got my mouth unwired and got out of the hospital, I said, I'm going to get me a big old fat steak. And then, when they unwired my mouth, they left brackets behind my teeth. They left brackets there and had to put these little rubber band type things on my teeth. And it was to gradually open my mouth, because I couldn't just unwire my mouth and open it all the way automatically, because they were afraid I would break a bone or something again. And so then I couldn't open it but maybe a quarter or a half inch, and I was very sad and disappointed, because I thought I was just stuck that way permanently. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know why. Okay, what was the point behind you unwiring my mouth if I can't even open and eat a steak now? And then right there, probably like a week or so after I got out and I came back home to Bradley County, I started the very next week, May 6th, I started their rehab program at the hospital in Atlanta. And I went to visit that doctor who did my jaw surgery over here and wired my mouth shut and everything. And he was telling me how I didn't need to eat things that were too hard to chew, such as steak. He mentioned steak, but he said a list about this long. And I just wanted to close my eyes and start laughing, because little did he know
You'd already eaten that stuff.
I had already gotten down to that steak. I had a great friend of my dad's that cooked me a steak. Yeah, I guess it was that first weekend home, but he cooked me a steak, and it was the best thing I'd ever ate, ever. It
Good
was
for you, buddy.
amazing.
Well, good tribute to your mom. I know a lot of us kept up with your recovery and stuff because she would post things on social media. So we were following your recovery, and from Erlanger down to the therapy unit, and it was her words. And no one writes like a mom, too, you know,
Yeah.
because those are great
Right.
words from the heart.
Right.
So
Well, and I want to give credit to your dad. He is a great guy.
Yeah, he was there, I'm going to say 80% of the time, but was there the other 20%, he was there in spirits.
Oh, yeah.
But that other 20%, he had to come back home and get some work done.
Exactly.
Because if it wasn't for that, then our lights probably wouldn't be on right now.
And your brother is a great guy.
Oh, a great
He
brother.
loves you to death. You know that.
I didn't realize how much a brother meant to me until all this has happened. A brother, or what I call a sister-in-law, whatever. The in-law word, it gets in the way.
Sure.
I'll just take that off and use sister. But the day of my accident, my brother and his wife and the youngest baby take the youngest baby to Erlanger to get some MRIs and such ran on the baby's head, because the doctors thought that the baby's head was too big for his body, and luckily they found out nothing was wrong. But he's on his way back to the hospital. He's on his way back to home to drop the kid and the wife off, and he gets a phone call saying that his brother, I've been in an accident. And so then he gets off at the exit and passes by the office where I work, and there's just an ambulance just sitting there, and he's like, what in the world are they just sitting there for? And so he goes and drops his wife.
Because it's a cheap Ford that broke down. That's why they're just
You
sitting there.
daggum right. And he'll say the same thing. But he goes and drops the baby and his wife off, and he comes back and he pulls in, and by the time he shows back up, the second ambulance that they transferred me over to was there and transferring me. And my brother pulls in and says, what the heck's going on? And then he helps them finish up transferring me over everything. And he couldn't ride in the ambulance because it was a traumatic injury. So they don't let anybody ride in ambulances when it's traumatic, I guess. And they're climbing down out of the back of the ambulance. They're done transferring me over. And my brother starts walking back towards his truck, and there was a paramedic that stopped and said, hey, sir, you know you can't follow this ambulance, right? And he turned around and he said, sir, you know I really don't care, right? And he said, no, seriously, sir, by law, you cannot follow this ambulance while it's in pursuit. And he said, no, seriously, sir, by law, what you don't realize is I just don't care, because that's my little brother in there, and I'll follow this ambulance if I want to. And so he followed it from Charleston, Tennessee, exit all the way to Erlanger in Chattanooga.
For anybody listening who doesn't know your brother, they need to just leave him alone.
For sure.
Because he could break them in half like a toothpick. I used to take pictures for the banner at football games, and when I go to Walker Valley and your brother played for Walker Valley Mustangs football, I always felt sorry for people on the other team who were going to experience the wrath of your brother. Big dude, but he's got a huge heart.
Huge.
Yeah.
He's a great, wonderful
Where do you
guy.
go from here? What do you got as far as therapy and getting
well,
back to so-called normal life?
right. And that's one thing that I've realized, is that there'll never, ever be another normal again. And so I've just had to learn to make a new normal.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that as long as eventually I get my paycheck again on Fridays. Everything will be okay, because I've learned that through everything, I still have the same spending habits, but the income has changed drastically. It has changed drastically. And I've had to learn how to manage all that. And, I got done with rehab in Atlanta July 10th, and then came back here, and a couple weeks later I started with Siskin in town. I was thinking, I was like, wow, I'm not gonna have to go to Atlanta every week and stay the whole week, yada yada yada. I'm so excited. And then my case manager gets me in with Siskin. Not only does she get me in with Siskin, but she gets me in with Siskin in Cleveland. So, and I didn't even know we had a Siskin in Cleveland until I started there. But I was like, oh, that's great. I don't even have to get on Interstate 75 South to go to rehab anymore. And that's been wonderful. And I want to thank everybody at the rehab program in Atlanta and as well here, because if God wouldn't have put those people in my life, then I wouldn't be walking today.
So you continue a couple days a week, maybe?
Yeah,
Siskin.
I've had 3 days a week, and I've had occupational therapy, which deals with my fine motor skills, and actually I've graduated from that, thankfully. And then speech therapy, we're working on like my memory and whatnot. And then physical therapy that we're doing the fine tuning on like the really, really fine balancing, and then there's just different we're strengthening core muscles. There's just very, very few things that we're working on anymore because, like I said earlier, Monday is my last day, thankfully.
Good for you. I got to ask you this question, then we're going to take a break, and we'll take a couple more callers. By the way, I'll just remind everybody, well, first of all, Cameron Touchstone's our guest this morning, talking about the incredible miracle, the way God healed him, and a lot of prayers by the people all over the country, I guess. But we're also giving away a Thanksgiving meal for 6 people from Old Fort Restaurant. You go by next Wednesday and pick it up. And it's turkey, dressing, sweet potato casserole, green bean casserole, dessert, the whole fixins. And you got to call and answer a trivia question. We'll do that here in just a minute. I got one more question for you, Cameron. It keeps going through my mind. If you if you put air in any tires, or do you dread that? Or
that's one thing for sure I've not done, and I'm not going to ever do again. Actually, my first weekend out of the hospital down there before I started rehab, my first weekend home, I went over to the shop at Wright Brothers where I worked to visit everyone, and I told my boss, I said, listen, I will do absolutely anything y'all tell me to. And when I say anything, y'all can take anything to the very, very far extension of anything.
Yeah.
But the day that y'all tell me to air up a tire, I'm gone. I'm gone.
Ain't gonna happen, is it?
Nope.
Thank
never.
you for coming in.
I'm glad I could come in.
We're fine. I don't want you to leave, but Mark McGuire texted me. He's on his way with Cameron. We got another great story. Or Tanner.
Yeah.
I got Cameron here. Cameron and Tanner are actually friends. They went to high school together.
We graduated together.
I want you to hang around, listen to Tanner's story, and then Dr. J is going to close out with a word this morning for all of us. Thanks for coming in, big guy.
Yes, sir. Thanks for
We'll be
having me.
right back.